Ontology wants to say like you must have an explanation for the whole. So you must be able to explain everything, which is not so hard once you know it, of course, and like everything. See, this is like the books I've written standing here. It's like all these like school books I have written by hand. But most of it we have already, I did. We have like, with a smartphone, and then you just one page, click, one page. It goes much more quicker than scanning. And even if you see it on the phone like this, you can really read the handwriting very clearly. And also maybe there's machinery that can translate handwriting into a print, which I'm not very favorable of, but maybe it's also necessary. Because it's more better if it's handwriting, because then you can see everything from that moment you went through. Because in the handwriting, if you just have typed letters, they're like sterile. Questions, yeah. Well, I don't have too many questions, but
yeah.
Because it's better to think of the answers. So if you think of the answers, you have no questions.
So you have answers.
Of course, everybody can have answers if you want to.
Yeah. And what do you think? What would be those answers?
Well, what is the question? Is that a question?
Yes, if you have an answer. So, about what answers will you think about?
I would. The best thing is when you travel is not to have too many things in your head. You must be kind of open-minded.
Yeah.
Just kind of let things come on to you, and then that's, I think, the best.
And what was the most interesting thing the last time you had?
Like my last travel?
Yeah.
Well, also Ladakh was like a long time I wanted to go there. Kashmir, Srinagar, like. I didn't get to Srinagar because of the political situations there. It's more like Tibet, that region, Ladakh. It's more like Tibet. That is part of India. Many regions are like that. That's why also no border is the only border we know. Well, I find some money in my bin, and I have already quite a bit of money here.
Whoa!
And it says Brazil.
Brazil.
Yeah.
Brazil, and why Brazil, and what you're going to do there?
Well, Brazil was always like when you're a young kid, you kind of want to go down the Amazon. It's kind of a dream or a fantasy. But I heard from people it's better to go up the Amazon, because then the boat is more close to the shoreline, and you can see the villages better and nature. So if you go down, it goes more in the middle of the river, and you don't see that much.
And how did it appear, this dream?
Well, when you see it on television when you're a kid, or you learn it in school.
At what years that was?
I must have been in my teens. Yeah.
So it was 60s, 70s?
Yeah, before. Yeah, 60s. Yeah, in the 60s must have been there.
It was popular, this tropical music.
Well, the idea, yes, I think so.
Yeah. And
it's kind of exotic. It's maybe the same like taking the Trans-Siberian train. A little bit comparable, maybe.
And have you tried Trans-Siberian train?
No, it's also still on my itinerary. Any questions? Frightening. Well, the only time I get I consider myself one with it, but when I think of it, that your complete becoming is sometime ended, when I think of that, when I can see that, there's also part of me that kind of gets scared from that. You understand? So like there's energy with me that, like when you can see that your becoming ends forever. It doesn't, and that's the main thing, of course, is that kind of thing when you understand that, like there's a lot of that, there's a lot in between, and you don't kind of see that. That's why it's kind of scary. So it's like getting a meal that's the kind of not cooked yet. Yeah, you can, but that's the way it is, So and then you have to kind of close the gap in between the two of them. I think human beings are not the oldest creatures or the youngest, Like if you look from the end, you're the youngest when you are the furthest to the end. And then you are the oldest when you are more to the beginning. And then of course you can have the discussion first also, should we start looking from the beginning or from the end? Well, you should look from the end and then back to where you are. But anyway, you know, animals must be further than human beings. Plants must be further than animals. Elements must be further than plants. Because like it's a less appetizing job kind of. But sometimes I have like things, you know, like if you then mix that up with the complete beginning, then you kind of I have kind of a brain flip. Because I don't know anymore. Because then it gets very hard. See, if you have the complete beginning, it means everything became at the same time. So who's what? So then the elements say, why are you a human being? It's my turn to be a human being. So you would have also like eternal warfare. While the fear, of course, you must be able to control it. If you can't control it, then you get panic. And then you're worse off. No, that's very dangerous. Well, to kind of avoid that, you must be at ease with death. If you're at ease with death, then you don't have any scare. Is it? No, you could have scare anyway. Because life after death might be very miserable. Oh, that's like making fun of it. It's not very easy, you know, and like because you move around in a kind of I almost say in a kind of machine, so you just can't hop out that easy, you know. Of course, one always can. Sure. I acknowledge that also. But now my mind gets to a point where it really says like, ugh, you know, because on one side you can see there has to be no misery at all, and the other side you also realize that even all the misery, that it's only once anyway. So why don't have it also? See, like that's also like almost being like the devil talking to you. Huh? So that way it's kind of hard. And I think to the end it's there anyway, but it's only when you want to be part of it or not. You know, that's the only thing. And I think all of us here, you know, kind of part of it. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. Huh? Also, like, you know, if you have the Big Bang going like this and going back like that, the Big Bang might be like a temporarily nirvana. And if you have on the complete beginning, like at the very beginning, one new one becomes, so that then you this yeah, I don't know. This is hard. Then like from nirvana, matter from nirvana, matter starts to come back. Well, I mean, from nirvana it becomes matter again, because nirvana is no matter and it doesn't need any space. That's the best thing about nirvana, or godhood, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, you can reach it any moment if you like to. Yeah. That's also that can be a scare also. Yeah. Well, you must first start maybe with this one, like whenever everything became at the same time, and from there on it always went on, and nothing really changed since that time. But if you also understand that since your becoming is only once, you should at least have the choice of what you are or where you are. Now, if you add them two together, you could be anywhere or be anything. Well, in theory, yeah. In practice, I don't know. You have to try it. But I think also even if you try it temporarily, you know, because you're not so far yet. But that can work up as a fear sometimes also. There's more of these things, you know. And I think everybody has them, you know, but they're like personalized. One has more on that field, another one more on that field. And then you're there. Then there's nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Des is like a little kid compared to that. That's only one life. But nirvana means like nothing anymore. And then when you can see, you can reach it totally at the same time. Oh, that can be scary. Yeah. And then you have to make some relativations. Oh yeah, well, if it would be, it would only be temporarily anyway. Oh yeah, your mind has to kind of try it. My mind does that things, I think, at times. Sometimes I don't even notice it. Sometimes I do. Sometimes also when I build up really kind of nice energy, then it just goes, floop, it's gone. Well, religion only became when human mankind started to stay in one place, because then they had kind of time left over and they could kind of think of things like that. And I really only start to understand religions when I kind of did my works on ontology, because then now I understand how that fits together. Any book is a religious book from that point of view. From religious, everything is religious. Otherwise you would be the one that wasn't, if you would quote differently. See, then you kind of mix the two up. The goal of religion? Yeah. Many. Depends on the person that kind of makes it. Can be anything really. Yeah. Any possibility is there. Yeah.
But also...
in general, you can say in our world here, it's more like, it's like to control people. Well, forward is backwards also. Because like if you start here, you make a circle, you're back at the same place. Mm-hmm. But, you never make a perfect circle. You make a circle that's like just just a tiny little bit smaller. Maybe the difference is like one of the smallest particles, as I call becoming. So like one becoming is like if the Big Bang goes like this and back, the next time it's exactly the same as last time we were sitting here. Remember I talked to you about this last time we're sitting here? So now all the particles, they just moved on one. So the particle here moved on one there, and like everything. So one particle came fresh in, and one particle left me forever in the meantime. That's the only difference. So then you can see progress is not very fast. If you see the Big Bang going like this, and it goes only one particle forward every time. And I think that's kind of reality. that is very hard to chew up also. But then of course you have also like, because of the total movement, like everything is moving, so there must be a reason, that everything is moving. So if the becoming is starting up, then everything starts to move that side, if you just put it in a linear way. And if it goes the other way, then everything moves that way. And like when this is moving here still and that's moving that, you kind of get almost collision. So you kind of mingle these two together from the beginning and from the end. And that's also maybe why many people have the feeling like the good and the bad. And if you understand the good is from that side and the bad from that side, then from the good side you can talk easier and better to the bad side, because you understand why it is. Yeah? I don't know if this is very clear, but the meaning is there. It's also like, when you become for the first time, you kind of are only one moment and then you drop back and the next one drops back, and that goes on for a very long time. Like if you put all the particles of the Big Bang on a row, so all that time it goes back into time. And then somewhere halfway, the time of like in between two, then it starts to come back. You can almost make like a flyer of it, like a V, and then you can make a line in the middle, like to the end, and then you make the connection. It looks like a kite. You can also make like just a cross in that also. But that's more to give it a little bit of a deviation. But anyway, if I put all these factors together, I cannot get any other conclusion than that. Yeah. Creativity, creativity is like without thinking out of the box. So that also means progress. But also one should be considering that that's the way one has to be. So you're not any more special than the other ones. If you would think differently, then you kind of miss the ball. Because people, if they see art, they get inspired. Even if they only find it ugly or a waste of time, still they get kind of, the brain is working. That gives other things again. In the 70s, I really liked all these kind of rock bands very good, you know. And I still can enjoy them, but, you know, like Bob Marley was very great in the beginning also, but they kind of put him on the radio so much they killed him, his music. Yeah. No, that's always, you know, when there's good music, they put it on so much that nobody likes it in the end anymore. It's like when you like anything that you get to eat, if they give it you 3-4 times a day, after a week you don't want it anymore. Same way. Well, we don't need anything, really, because in logic it would be the other way around. You would be needed by them. From a teacher, anything is teaching. Anything. See, any word you take, if you look from that point, everything is like that. So if you take even a couch, from a couch, and you look at anything, yeah, the chair, yeah, it's almost a couch, a bit shorter. Yeah, anything can be a couch in the end. If you kind of, you know, get us through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard in that sense when you think of it, that all the things that wouldn't have to be and still are, if you kind of get in that kind of thinking, that's not very nice to be in there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No. That I don't think I will ever like that. I even try to avoid it, you know. No, it's not very nice. And also it's like back, it's not forward. So one should not consider it too much. I think I can travel for quite a few more years. For me to settle down, time is kind of getting short, you know. Now just to build up something, also if you like trees and things around like that, man, it takes like 20-40 years to grow something. Now that kind of looks like a tree. So you need quite a bit of time for that. Now if you really want to find a place and have your own little world, kind of your own paradise. That takes quite a while, eh? Well, I have planted some in the polder. And I have some little trees in the garden, but I have to clip them all the time because otherwise they get too big. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the reality, there's no past, there's no future, and there's not even now. Because if I say now, it is already past. So neither three of them really exist. And maybe I come to the Ukraine, I buy an old house and I'm gonna live there, you know. Also possible, anything is possible. You must never exclude anything. But you know, here in Western Europe, it's not really, you know, every inch of land is already worth so much money. You have to be a kind of a millionaire in euros or dollar to kind of afford anything, you know. And then to keep it up, it's also cost you a fortune. So then you first have to win the lottery. Which is also very difficult because you must get hit by lightning 2 times before you can win the lottery. You understand? In statistics, you're 2 times earlier struck by lightning as that you win the lottery. So that's maybe also like many times we want to move too quick to this kind of sterile worlds. Now, like many times people get also diseases from that because that progress goes a bit too quick. You know, for example, I didn't even know that I'm very against grass mowing. I don't like that. No, there's no reason for it. And even because they mow the grass too much, people get allergies. Because you never get used to these different kind of pollens or whatever. Same like when you have a house that you keep too dust free. When you come outside, you have an allergy because you're not used to the dust. Or same when you don't never play outside in the dirt. You get very, You have no resistance in your body. You know? You have to pick it up from the bit of dirt when you're a little child. In India, if you're well-to-do, you do nothing. So people degenerated even more quick than here. You understand? I got to Australia after about 2 years. No, well, 1.5 years, I think. And then I stayed there about 1 year in New Zealand. And then I started moving back here. But then I flew back from Delhi. I flew back here.
Oh.
No, Mumbai. It was from Mumbai. Yeah, and then I wanted to make a trip to Africa. And I had a van, I had everything fixed, but then just little things added up to a big disaster. I kind of had an accident with the van, and it was also my fault. And then at the same time, my father died, so I couldn't live at home. I lived there, I would be there once in a while. But then, of course, my younger brother, he had no understanding. And I just want to go away there. So then I was also homeless, and I didn't have a job in that time. So I couldn't get a house, I couldn't get money. And then I kind of went around Europe to see some friends, but then you also discover you have no friends. If you think you have no friends, you're okay. If you think you have friends that's going to help you when you're in very need, you're wrong. Nobody will. I kind of came back to Holland, and then I stayed quite a while around here. And only in the 90s I start to kind of go traveling a bit again. And then mainly I would go around like Eastern Europe, because that is the first time you could go and kind of freely go there. And my mother, she had demented, so she was in a nursing home and nobody would ever really visit her. I would only visit her once a week on Sunday for 1 hour, but that was enough for her. But to go away longer than 1 month would be quite hard on her. And that was, and then when she passed away, that maybe is now already 10 years ago, I think. Then I started to go 3 months. The first one was to Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, because that time in the 70s you could go there. So that was the first one I did. Then I think I went to Middle America for a few months. I went to Africa 3 times, to South America 3 times. To India 3 times. That adds up already 10 years. Yeah.
And what will you say about the time? Do you feel it, how the world is changing?
Yeah, well, it always changes. It depends how much value you give to that also. If you push the wagon or if you hold the wagon back. In that sense or any sense. In a way you can see I have my view on the world already so far past that, since I understood we should have better stayed nomadic.
Mm-hmm.
Then this doesn't already really exist. So that also is kind of hard to balance sometimes.
And your life, it's more nomadic.
Well, I think also I have to be the way I have to be. You know, once you're at the end of the road and you look back, then and you see everybody pass by, then everybody is the same way as you were. So in that sense, there's not really anything special. Also, one must consider that if there ever was nothing, how much could you make out of nothing? Never more than nothing. Nothing plus nothing is nothing. 1 times nothing is nothing. 1,000,000 times nothing is still nothing. That was a nice one. Flipped out. Just like that.